Welcome to the Voices of Long COVID podcast. I'm your host, Noelle. On this podcast, I'll be interviewing long COVID sufferers and asking them to share their very personal but compelling stories, giving them a voice, unfiltered and uncensored. The latest count is at 400 million long COVID sufferers, and their lives are not disposable. We are moms, dads, daughters and sons, nurses, teachers, business people, and artists, and we deserve to be heard and recognized. I myself have had my life turned upside down by this illness. I've been sick for 4 years now. That's 1,460 days, with no end in sight. People say they don't know anyone with long COVID. Well, now you do. On this week's episode, I'm joined by Kristie from Calgary, Alberta. She was 27 years old when she was struck down by COVID and then long COVID. And she's here to share her story with us today. Welcome, Kristie.
Hi there. Thank you.
Thank you for being on the podcast and for being willing to share your lived experience with us today. So, starting off, can you tell us a bit of your background? What was your life like before your COVID infection?
I had a very active life in many different facets. You know, I've been active in my church. I've been active in the community through different social, help. I've been active through work. I often had one to 2 to 3 jobs I was a single parent for most of that. And so I always had a lot going on. I always, like my grandma said, I always had like irons in the fire to keep kind of pursuing my dreams. Very motivated, never looked back and, didn't feel sorry for myself. I was always pushing forward, had a garden, had made a lot of my foods. I was really healthy. I was also a disabled adult transit driver, so I had to go through a series of tests for cognitive function. And so I scored really high, and I was 1 out of 10, and actually the youngest driver in Edmonton. And so I was,
wow.
Yeah. So I think it was like 580 people, but it was over 500 people. And I was 1 of 10 that was chosen for that job.
That's amazing.
I was highly qualified for it, but I also was just really sharp. I could juggle many things at once, things like laundry and cooking. And, I was really, really, I loved that challenge. Like, challenges have always been something that just have always lit my brain up and have always made me feel alive. Yeah.
And so what are the circumstances around you getting COVID and then long COVID?
It was a really interesting situation for me. So that September, I'd come off mat leave and I was working right away, and my kids got sick right away, and I got sick right away as soon as we went back. So I'd actually taken 2 tests before the third one was positive. So the weird thing was I had even volunteered to be a COVID driver, and I'd actually just taken the course, and I was actually going to go into the circulation of COVID drivers when I went back, because I was the youngest driver. And I thought, better me than some 50-year-old person, right? That won't be able to handle this silly flu thing.
So what was your COVID infection like? Was it mild? Was it moderate?
My first symptom of COVID was actually something called phantosmia.
Right.
So I have a hard time talking about this because it makes me sound crazy, but I was smelling a dead body. I say dead body because I've never smelled anything like that. It was horrifically bad. Nothing was getting rid of the smell. And so that was my first sign.
Yeah, you're not crazy. There's so many people that had that. My husband
Yeah.
had phantom smells. He would smell cigarette smoke where there wasn't any.
Yeah.
And yeah, many, many, many people have experienced that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully, I haven't gotten that specific smell, but I smell things all the time now. And when COVID kind of, it didn't go away. It never went away for me. But when I want to say like the first stage stopped and I got my smell back and my taste back, because that left Christmas Day. So my smell and taste were gone Christmas Day, which really sucked because
Merry Christmas.
Christmas dinner.
Oh,
Yeah, but then the next day, I got my taste back. The
the very next day.
very next day, I got my taste back, but my smell was gone till April.
Oh, wow.
Around my birthday time is when I noticed it was back because I went to go get myself flowers. And I was in the flower shop and I started noticing that I was smelling things.
So, you had your acute infection.
Mhm.
Do you remember about how long after that you started realizing that you're having these lingering symptoms or even realizing that you had long COVID?
Yeah, it was pointed out to me actually by others because I was in denial. I think
Mm-hmm.
all the typical symptoms of COVID I got, like the shortness of breath, all that stuff, except I wasn't hospitalized, none of that. After Christmas, and I was clear to go back to work if I didn't have symptoms. I woke up the day before and I had pink in both eyes.
Pink eye. Yeah.
But mine actually felt like it was extremely painful because the backs of my eyes felt like they were being squished like a lemon. And so then I waited, I want to say it was a week or less than a week for them to be clear. I noticed that my one right eye was still really sore sometimes. So I went back to work and I've never been so tired in my life. I noticed the fatigue that week, but I thought, it's just because I'm sluggish. I haven't worked in a while. It was the worst. I remember getting like those Coke, they're like energy drinks. I was like, I need an energy drink, which I don't normally do. And
Right.
I took two that day and it was still wasn't, I was like falling asleep by the end of my shift. I was so tired. I could tell during the day, and it's not the safest, but I could tell during the day something wasn't right. Like, it's like, should I be driving? Should I be driving? This is the question I kept asking myself. And I'm like, am I safe? Am I safe? Every driver gets tired sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
it's life. Drivers sometimes stay up till 2 in the morning. It's part of our job to make sure we're safe. But at the time, I'm like, I've never dealt with this, so I'm just going to try to alleviate the symptoms of this.
Right.
And I wasn't so bad that like I was going to cause an accident, but I didn't know for sure. And thankfully I didn't. Actually, I went back to the yard and one of my coworkers looked at me and he's like, "You don't look good. You don't look good at all. Like you should be at home." So I talked to my supervisor. I'm like, "I'm not doing well." He's like, "Okay, like you can fill out the short-term disability forms," and that's kind of where everything started.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think by the end of January, I had just gotten fed up with all the symptoms. Like I was losing debit cards all the time. Um, I think I lost 18 debit cards within a few months.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I was like, in many ways, I was a mess, but I was managing to keep me and my kids fed and get them to school and stuff. But like, that was about all I could do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, I've never, this whole brain fog thing. It's not, I mean, maybe other people are getting just little bits of brain fog.
No, no,
This is not brain fog.
no.
Brain fog, if you can drink a smoothie, which I have. you can go for a run and you feel better. Like, this is what I
Yeah.
used to do. I was a runner. I could run 5 to 10 kilometers.
Yep.
I can't run. As soon as I run, my head starts pounding. Like, I can feel that. And so,
Yeah. The names that they use are ridiculous. Brain fog.
yeah.
I forget my own daughter's name.
Yeah.
That's not brain fog. Like I named you.
Yeah.
And what's your name again? Like I can't figure out her name.
Yeah. I ended up getting like a scan on my brain. And I think it was a CT scan, but I don't remember. And they looked and they didn't see any blood clots or anything. So that's what they were looking for, was like blood clots and stuff. And I didn't see anything. So like, well, you had a scan, so everything was normal. I think, you just have to rest. It could be a little bit of long COVID, but you'll probably get better. And it's been 4 years.
Yeah, it's been 4 years. So you've started talking a little bit about that, but what has your experience been like with receiving medical care for long COVID? Have you been believed? Have you received any actual positive help in that regard?
Having to kind of get as much information as I could from nurses or doctors or whoever I could find that would listen or try to help me. And I was a young person too, so it was like, why is this happening to my brain? So also not seeing anything in any of these scans was also scary, because you clearly have huge issues.
Yeah, well, I found out through this that for the longest time, people that had MS were not believed because they hadn't developed a test for MS yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so these patients were told back in the day, it's all in your head.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't until they invented the MRI that they went, oh, yeah, there's something here. So I feel like we're still in that early stages of the illness where they haven't developed, they're not working hard at it. They haven't developed a test for us yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're not being believed, and it's every excuse in the book. Like for me, it was, you're a woman of a certain age. That's not a symptom. And for you, it's, well, you're too young, and it's whatever excuse they want to throw at it. If they don't have the answer, instead of just saying, I don't know, but I'm going to look into this for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They just gaslight.
Exactly. And so the very first doctor I had, which was my family doctor from before, who had helped a lot with my daughter and things like that, she had a secretary, and the whole thing was not good. I wasn't given the proper care. I wasn't referred to neurologists. I wasn't referred to anybody in that time. She just would fill out the disability forms. And at one point, I had to actually not go to an appointment because I had COVID symptoms. And so they're saying, you can't come in if you have COVID symptoms. This was early 2021, right? And so I requested a phone appointment, and she never called. And then I was told, just bring in the paperwork because I needed the long-term disability filled out. So I brought in the stuff. And then for about, I don't know, I want to say like a month or more, I was told, oh, they've been filled out and sent. And I talked to my supervisor, they hadn't been filled out and sent. And then basically I was crying to this person, this
Secretary.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, this isn't okay. Like, I can't, like, I need help here. And like, it's hard enough for me to balance all the paperwork and all the stuff. And so she's like, you've been rude to us. And I was like, I haven't been rude to you at all. Like, I mean, I'm just saying that, like, I can't wait on this paperwork anymore. And she's like, well, you didn't come to your appointment. And I was like, I didn't come to my appointment because I had COVID symptoms that I was told to fill out. I don't understand. So they ended up saying, you can't come to this clinic anymore. So I had to find a new doctor. And
so your doctor fired you?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's insane.
The other doctor did apologize. Like, I went in there, like, you can't step foot on this property. And they sent me a letter and just basically said, you're just not allowed here anymore. And I'm like, okay, I'm a problem. This is what I'm getting, that I'm a
yeah, you're too much work for them.
Too much work. Exactly.
And they're supposed to be there to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing the exact opposite.
And there was
Yeah.
no referrals to neurologists. So the good thing was when I did get the other doctor, immediate referrals to neurologists, psychologists, psychiatrists, um, which really went nowhere. But at least I have those records. At least I started to get that help right away. And the other good thing is that there's a lot of drama with that clinic. There's a lot of really bad reviews. It was happening to a lot of people. And so not being involved in that kind of environment when you're trying to get help is really, really important.
Absolutely. I'm sorry that happened, and I'm glad you found a better
Yeah,
doctor.
I did. Yeah.
How has long COVID impacted your relationships with family, friends, colleagues, and reactions from strangers? What has that been like for you?
It's either one or the other. Sorry, I can't do this right now, or I'm bursting into tears, right? So that sorry, I can't do this right now often makes people feel like I don't like them or I don't have time for them.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it's been really lonely because I it's part of my symptoms and I'm not crazy. I'm just dealing with this issue. And sometimes I don't have the issue. So sometimes I look fine. And so that can be really disorientating for people. It's really hard to explain to somebody who doesn't experience it. You're not receiving, like, it's not, you don't see reality different. You're not hallucinating. You're not any of this.
Yeah.
But your brain literally just shuts down sometimes. And if you don't have people that understand people with disabilities and have some sort of understanding of this person is still a person, they're just struggling with something at this time, let's give her a minute, then it can often create massive issues in the family or in friend structures. And in a sense, it kind of weeds people out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We need people that validate our experience. And I've learned that when that isn't happening, that is really something about them. It's not about us, that they don't have the emotional intelligence to be able to validate or even to be there to support, which is really
Mhm.
unfortunate. But yeah, you're right. It does weed out
It does.
the people that we don't need in our
Mhm.
lives. What about people, strangers, or people you meet in the supermarket or people on the internet? How has that been like when you talk about long COVID or they see your symptoms?
I struggle with it because with a cancer patient, someone says they have cancer, and you're like, oh man, like this person needs help. Like they're really struggling. And everybody's really in agreement that cancer exists. It is something that we should have GoFundMe's for and help people with and do all sorts of stuff. I'm not saying I need a GoFundMe right now, but I kind of do. But
Yeah.
but it's one of those things, right, where it's just like people just automatically say, "Man, that is the worst. Like we'll go run for you, we'll go do whatever," and they deserve it. 100% they deserve it because it's one of the worst things to go through ever.
Yes.
But when I say I have long COVID, and I sometimes feel not that I have cancer, but that I'm dying of a different way, in a different way. And because there's not enough research on this, am I? I'm not trying to be like, it's that question in our minds when we're really, really sick and we know something's really, really wrong. Are you going to wake up tomorrow? Where's the science behind that? Where's all of that? We don't know. And so I think that's also something that can be really scary. And so what I get from people on the internet or strangers is I either get the blank stare, like, drank the Kool-Aid, crazy lady, or I get this overwhelming response of like, I'm so sorry, I know somebody that's gone through this. And so, there really isn't, there's like a middle area where people don't know where to be, I think. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people. Um, because I think they don't want to be political. And so they don't want to show support because then they might get lambasted by these other people. And yet we need all the support we can get. And so I think it can be a really awkward situation when I do tell people what I'm struggling with. I went to school. I actually quit my job after being on disability for a certain amount of time. Part of me knew that I would never be the same. I would get a lot of judgment, I think, from people saying, did you cheat? Like, you got an A on this test, you get an F on the next one. Like,
Oh, yeah.
where's the middle ground? The roller coaster between, like, I was in engineering, like, really, really good work and really bad work.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty stark contrast.
Yeah.
Yeah, going back to what you were saying about society and long COVID, I feel like it's not socially acceptable yet, and it's really unfortunate that it is so political. And as soon as I say the words long COVID, I see people's eyes gloss over and they just shut down, and they don't want to talk about masks, and they don't want to talk about vaccines. And it's like, no, I'm just talking about my symptoms. And I hate how political it is. It's really unfortunate. And we do deserve support just like anyone else.
I'm really sorry I experienced that. Yeah. And I think it's just happening to all of us.
Yeah. We're going to take a break and remind you, with full disclosure, that this podcast takes several days to record and create, depending on the health of the host and the guests. I am relying on the help of others for editing. Any discussion of modalities or treatments are not to be considered medical advice. If you believe you have long COVID, know that you are not alone. Seek out the many Facebook groups for community support, such as Long COVID Canada and COVID Long Haulers Support Group Canada, and please speak to your doctor for medical support. So what symptoms do you continue to have now?
So it's my right eye that I have pain around. It's not as frequent as it used to be, but I still have it. It's still always there.
You still have that eye pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, yeah, mornings are really difficult. I have extremely bad insomnia. It hasn't stopped. I remember that. And it's been 3 years. Insomnia doesn't even begin to kind of describe it. So we're just like, oh, a little bit of insomnia, a little bit of brain fog. This insomnia is unlike anything. I go to bed, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, and my mind will not shut off. And it's kind of like it there used to be a switch or something that says, okay, it's nighttime, it's bedtime, go to bed now.
Yeah, I think we need a new name. It's not insomnia, it's more than that.
Yeah.
And I've learned that my body is stuck in fight or flight. So it has a lot to do with the autonomic nervous system.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's some nights that there's nothing I can do. My body just will not go to sleep. And for me, it's part of ME/CFS. So it's my body is stuck in that mode and it's tired but wired.
Yeah.
And that's a real sign that I've overdone it somehow.
Yeah.
And I just can't go to sleep. No, even though I'm exhausted, I can't go to sleep. And even if I do sleep, I'm experiencing non-restorative sleep. So I could sleep 8 hours and wake up and feel like it's been 5 minutes. Yeah,
Yep.
I totally get that.
I feel that. That deprivation it's really, really hard to handle in everyday life, because we're used to being able to take control of things that were within our control, such as sleep, such as exercise and all these things. And it's no longer in our control anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sense of out of controlness that I really despise.
Yeah.
Or have learned to accept too, actually. And so that's one really bad symptom. But another symptom is the forgetfulness. And it's sometimes it's come and go. So for example, when I was in school, there were things that I could not recall for the life of me, even though I just studied it. And I mean, I had studied this thing for weeks. I was like, there's no way I should forget this in the middle of a test or even just doing homework, whatever, because it's like it should come second nature. That was something that always would before. And, but then a couple of weeks later, I'll remember every single aspect of it.
Yeah, it comes and goes for me as well. And I've noticed that it comes on if I've overdone it. So for me, I think it's part of post-exertional malaise and
Yeah, PM.
PM. And I think it's brain inflammation. I think,
That's what I think too.
I tried doing, there was a company here that piloted a program for long COVID patients a few years ago, and they were a concussion rehab facility. And so they generously offered this program up for free for a few months. And so I tried to participate with other patients that were suffering from concussions. I couldn't do it. They wanted me to do 2 hours at a time, 2 days a week. And I said, okay, well, I can try 15 minutes to start. It was a way of challenging the brain.
Right.
And I got 5 minutes in and I got so dizzy, and the brain fog, for lack of a better term, started, and the brain pressure started. And I got so dizzy, I fell off my chair.
Oh no.
And I said, okay, well, I'm going to rest and I'll try it again next session. Again, same thing. So I couldn't follow through with it. But I feel like people with concussions have neurons, those neural pathways that are broken. And if they rehab it enough, they can strengthen and rebuild that neuron. And for us, it's not the same thing. It's inflammation that comes and goes.
Yeah.
And anything cognitive or physical can bring it on. And so doing that type of program made me sicker.
Made me sicker.
Yeah.
100%. I've experienced the same thing in my COVID clinic as well. They wanted me to basically do a boot camp. And so this boot camp was 4 days a week, and it was like 4 hours a day on top of my schooling, and would go home and sleep for hours, like hours at a time. And then they're like preaching the whole sleep hygiene thing, and I'm like, you don't understand. Like, hurting me.
Well, they're using traditional methods for something that's new, and they don't understand it yet. And I mean, believe me, somebody who was addicted to exercise and addicted to challenging my brain and doing all of those things, and an overachiever like many of us were, it's tough to wrap your head around that. But these things make us worse, for sure.
When I went to this COVID clinic and I was talking with even the counselor, and he's telling me, you know, people are struggling just like you are. I'm like, how are they getting through this program? I'm struggling.
Yeah.
And shortly before that program is actually when I started throwing up all over walls, which was scary. Pushing myself in school and doing math, even doing things like this. I get nauseous. I get that dizziness. So they did find out in the COVID clinic that my proprioception system is off. And this is common actually with concussion patients. They do the test when you're close your eyes and you walk in a straight line, and I couldn't do that.
Yeah, I had the same test. I ended up falling over every time I closed my eyes. I think I tried to balance on one leg or something and just would fall right over.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me. I had that, and it makes sense actually, because I was taking drafting, and drafting's one of the ones where I was like really good at before and really bad at now, because what happens is in AutoCAD, we'll put in a figure and then we can rotate it and see the 3D, and we have to see it, we have to envision it 3D. Every time I did a test, I felt like I was going to be sick. Or when I was doing the 3D portion, every time I was like, I'm going to pass out, I'm going to be sick. And it actually, I pushed myself, because I was like, maybe I'm not going to be sick. Maybe I'll be fine. Nope. Power puked all over the wall. I power puked so hard. I could feel my organs actually move in my body and they were sore because it was like they had become dislodged in this violent escapade. And I'd like also had it through my nose, which I've never had in my life.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it was
Yeah.
just extremely sudden, violent as can be. And I've never experienced that kind of violent sickness, like power all over the wall. And I was like, there's something really wrong. And so after those kind of situations had happened, I really started to realize that my body was saying no. And I had to
Yes.
be very, very careful about anything moving forward. That's when I really started to tone down my courses and take my health seriously.
And that's huge. That's huge. I think so many of us, like I was saying, are overachievers. And I can only speak for myself, but I wasn't listening to my body before this. And some people,
Yeah.
it takes something small. And then for some people, it takes violent vomiting
Yeah.
to go, no, something's wrong. I need to stop. And so it's like our bodies are screaming at us at this point. So I'm glad that we're finally listening.
Yeah. And I think it's not other people's fault. Like, I decided to go to school, I decided to pursue this with all my dreams intact, right? Um, but I think there's this, I wanted to prove to people that I could do it because I am smart and I do have moments of extreme clarity and extreme productivity. And it's just the daily in and out of being in that situation of having to produce all the time that I'm not capable of anymore.
Yeah.
So where do I fit? Now that there's no place for me, where do I fit? The 40-hour work week is not something I can do anymore. So what is it that I can do? And so how can I still use my talents and my abilities? What do we do with all these people that are on disability? What is everyone else doing? And then we meet each other and we see that we're at home and we don't have a path forward.
That is such a huge question. Like, where do we fit?
Mm-hmm.
Our lives still have value. We're not disposable.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be seen. And so I'm hopeful that this podcast will help with that.
I'm hopeful too.
On that note, should we take a brain break?
We should take a brain break.
Okay, let's take a break. We'll be back to our interview after a short brain break. The stories of my guests are remarkable in the sense of what they have survived and continue to deal with each and every day. Although unremarkable in that long COVID can happen to anyone, no matter your age or your health. It has happened and it continues to happen. This is an equal opportunity virus. What is your daily life like now? How has your life changed?
I mean, it's pretty much everything has changed. I talk about my brain like it's a person inside of me, actually, sometimes, because it's like it decides. Before I was the one kind of pulled the strings or made it work. But now it's like it decides. And so one of the things that I find really hard, especially if there's any emotional charge to a situation, is being able to properly articulate what I'm experiencing. And I also get slurred speech and like my speech becomes segmented. It's really kind of like all over the place. And sometimes when I'm doing really, really bad, which happens once or twice a week now, around my family or when I'm home and I'm finally relaxed, I'll only be able to say one word. I'll be like, dishwasher. My kids are used to that now. They're like, yeah, but it can be weird. I'll be like,
Mm-hmm.
dishwasher. I'll be like,
Yeah.
instead of saying the whole sentence, like, go to the bathroom and wash your face, go bathroom, wash face,
Mm-hmm.
is what I can get out.
Yeah, I was experiencing that when I was still working.
Yeah.
I would work all day and then come home and just, it would take me, my husband would say, "How was work today?" And it would take me 2 hours to process and settle before I could answer him.
Yeah.
And then it was very stilted. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really difficult. And
Yeah.
sometimes it creates a little bit of frustration. I get more frustrated with things easily. I'm like, go here, go do. And if I'm very overstimulated, the light sounds processing is not working. I'll be like, stop, don't talk. Like I'll say things like that that don't make a lot of sense to some people, but my family understands that I'm suffering an extreme reaction, and just to give me some space.
That's so tough. How old are your kids, by the way?
So I have a 4-year-old and I have a 10-year-old, and I have
Yeah.
a 12-year-old that doesn't live with me, but yeah.
That's so tough.
So yeah,
And it's hard for kids to understand.
it is really hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a course that my son is going to be taking pretty soon to understand when mom or dad has either mental health or, disabilities of some kind or something. And
Oh, that's really cool.
yeah, so it helps them emotionally understand what's going on in the moment. Because even though I can talk to my son after and I could be like, this is what it looks like, and I'll even show him videos of other people, of somebody doing the same thing where she says, don't stop, go, these things. And it can seem
Mm-hmm.
like you're really mad.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we're having a hard time with hands, motion, legs, moving, the whole bit, we can kind of seem a little bit like we're slamming things or so even when we're,
It's
yeah.
it's kind of like conservation of movement and conservation of energy,
Hmm.
right? Like I do everything I can to be organized and stay on the same floor for the majority of the day. So it
Me too.
sounds similar, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not meaning to be short with them, but literally you have to do the short movement and the short word for everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know they often look at me like, are you mad? And I'm like, no, like I'm very upset. But not at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm upset that I can't talk right now. And there's that emotional aspect to it, which I've gotten better at. But again, because healing is for us, all these things take time. All these,
Hmm.
because we get tired very easily. And so I can only do so much healing in so much time.
Yeah. That only adds to the frustration
Yeah.
because I remember I was reading a book on pacing
Yeah.
and it's an awesome book but it's very long. I still haven't finished it because I have to pace myself while I'm reading about pacing.
Yeah.
I mean, the irony is not lost.
Yeah. One of the things that I really miss about myself, the feeling of satisfaction when you figure out problems and you follow through with the problem. My brain is never able to do that. It can never go from A to B anymore. It takes a million routes to get there,
Hmm.
and usually takes months. So I don't get the immediate satisfaction that I used to get from I did this.
Yeah, I get that. With the pacing,
Yeah.
you have to stop things right in the middle of
Yeah.
it repeatedly, and I kind of equate it to being a parent of a baby or a toddler when you can't finish anything in one sitting,
Yeah.
but it's much longer with the pacing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The pacing is really, really difficult. Like they teach that a lot in the COVID clinics, and it's the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
Um, because on one hand, you're told you're not sick. And on the other hand, you're told you're sick. Here's pacing strategies.
Just rest. Just rest.
Yeah. And I'm like, I have kids,
Yeah.
plans.
Yeah.
I mean, these are not, I mean, my dream is to develop tiny homes for people. Does anyone care about the fact that I have an inventive mind, that I have the ability to bring these things to life? Like, what about all the other people who are inventive and creative and courageous and all those other people out there? So a good portion of those people are being taken out.
It's so tough. I think people see us resting and they think, oh, you're just
Mhm.
resting. But for somebody who wants to be out there doing all of the things and to have that taken away, learning to rest is a huge lesson. It's the biggest lesson. It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
The hardest thing I've ever done
Yeah.
too.
When you're,
Yeah.
trapped in your house and limited to your neighborhood, and all you want to do is be out there, but you have to really do some really tough work in learning how to rest and how to fully heal yourself. It's
Yeah.
extremely difficult.
It can be really difficult too if you associate resting with laziness.
Yeah, that's
Um,
me. Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep.
And so I've had to do a lot of past work as well and start fixing how I see that because, I see my fiance go about his work. He's an engineer. He goes and he does his thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so lazy. And I'm like, I'm not lazy, like at all. Like, this isn't, if I could, I would. And I think that whenever I say that, I just, because I have healthier people that see me for me and see this is a person who has a medical condition, she should be treated like she has a medical condition. Now I have those people in my life and it's made a huge difference. But yeah, it can be really, really difficult to learn to rest.
Yeah, and like you said, to unlearn that past, you know, your value is in what you contribute and what you do for a living.
Yeah.
And if you're sitting down, you're lazy. And so my kids never saw me lie down.
Hmm.
I I never sat still. And so I remember the first time they saw me lying down, they came home from school and they were just like, "What are you doing? Like
Yeah.
why are you lying down?" And that's tough for me because they don't
Yeah.
remember the act of me that would take them out on hikes
Hmm.
and do everything with them and make things from scratch. And I'm still working on that, still unlearning that work habit that was,
Ingrained.
yeah, yeah,
I think it's important to have work habit, but it's it's also very important not to do things to yourself to harm yourself if you literally can't.
yeah. Your health has to come first.
Yeah, I would often tell myself, "Oh, I can," when my body was saying, "No, no, no, you can't, you can't, you can't." And so it's those two voices kind of conflicting, and mine have gotten better, but a lot better. But I know that, that's also the voice of society. Well, you can, you can, you can. Trying to navigate that.
This is an emotional question. What are some of the biggest losses that you have suffered as a result of developing long COVID?
One of the biggest loss that I actually experienced was I've always had a dream to build tiny homes. And I ended up coming up with all these inventions and all these wonderful solutions for things regarding climate change, regarding renewable resources, and all this stuff. So that was something that I had been really focused on for many, many years. I really did love that kind of world, and I knew that I had a lot to offer in terms of being able to come up with designs. I've been drawing, and so I was very much meant to do that kind of work. And so, not being able to see my designs out there, not being able to share what I have to offer, what I have to give, has been a really big. I don't like to say that like it's also like other people are missing out because it seems really kind of narcissistic or something, right? Like but it's just this idea of being a part of things. And I mean,
Well, being a part of society, and people are missing out on your contribution. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And also just, I really love physics, really love math, always have. I have cried so many tears over literally not just being able to do it. Like it's this weird thing of like, oh, I can do it today and then I can't do it tomorrow. I can do it today, I can't do it tomorrow. Not having the neural pathways quite the same and not being able to put things together quite the same um, has felt like a huge loss, like a part of myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Are there any strategies that you have tried that have helped you manage your symptoms?
Reducing relationships that cause emotional strain. So, emotions are something that we have to juggle on a normal everyday basis. And when those emotional relationships are something that we're managing, we no longer have the ability to manage those anymore. And you really shouldn't have to manage other people and try to keep everybody happy. But
We literally don't have the energy for that.
we literally don't have the energy for that. So it's like, bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
What do you wish that people knew about your whole experience with getting COVID and being a long COVID sufferer?
I think the biggest thing is just that um, just feeling like it's very much different from people what they think it is and what you're actually experiencing. And there's this huge gap in between that thing, those two realities.
What do you need from friends and family, the general public, the medical community?
Flexibility. That'll be the number one thing, I think, because it is hard enough for me to understand what's going on in a situation at times, and try to articulate it and give all that information to the people that need it. Being loving in that flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I get a negative emotional response, it doesn't help me because my brain is just so overwhelmed already. It's so dealing with so much. We feel as if life is ending as we know it. And then we get this pushback from people sometimes. And I feel that can be really unfair.
I feel like people need to think about who we were before this.
Right.
And, how productive we were and how much of a strong work ethic we had. And so to look at how we are now and compare, they have to see the huge difference. And so they have to understand that something is going on. And they have to...
It's love. Like, that's what it comes down to, is like love for another human being. Like,
love and empathy for what we're going through, instead of putting their own judgment on what they see. Yeah.
Yeah, because it really makes us feel like there's no place for us. Like, I went on depression meds almost 6 months after COVID started because my emotions were a wreck. But they didn't really help that much in terms of the emotional part. And so I think it all comes down to, like you said, that inflammation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think mental health is not causative. The mental health did not cause the long COVID. The long COVID causes difficulties with mental health. I mean, you take anybody who has lost almost everything, and of course, they're going to have some struggles with that. Anybody would.
Exactly.
Okay, last question. Has there been any silver lining for you? Is there anything that you have learned about yourself through becoming chronically ill?
Yeah, so I was always the hare in the situation, or the tortoise and the hare. I was always 10 steps ahead. I mean, I pretty much every sports day I got first or second in all of the sports. I was like, why wait back there? What about back there? There's nothing back there for anybody.
There's no second place.
I was, but like, I mean, it is like you're just a million miles a second, right? And so I do believe that this was meant to teach me something for sure, but I'm not like, oh, I need to be punished kind of thing. I actually believe that the lessons that I've learned from this are so beautiful, like, and I'm so grateful. And I'll look back on things that I should have done in a year when it takes me 3 years. And the crazy thing is, it does get done. We've gotten rid of a lot of stuff. So we live more minimalist, which allows a lot more freedom. It takes the cognitive load off. And I feel more at ease and peaceful because of this transition. So as a result of having to set firm boundaries, or whatever you want to call them, for how I need to move forward in my life, I really have the best people in my circle that I could possibly have right now. They're like the cream of the crop.
That's right. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love to look at things as a learning opportunity. I always have. And we do still have value. And if something doesn't get done, someone will pick up the slack, or they won't, or, it's been a huge learning process for me as well. It still is.
Mm-hmm. I'm not managing all of these things anymore. I'm not worried about what someone else is going to think or this or that. It's like the people in my circle know me, love me, help me. I have a relationship now where I am seen for my worth as a human, and being sick through this process with this person has been incredibly overwhelming for me to know that this is my person, but also this is how people should treat one another. Yeah, like I know that a lot of people don't have that. And I think that whomever treats you as a human being is worth keeping around, because you're worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your very personal story with me today, with our listeners. And it was great to meet you.
It was really good to meet you.
Thank you to Craig Rogers for writing and recording this amazing theme music. Thank you for listening. Please make sure to follow Voices of Long COVID on our Instagram, TikTok, X, and YouTube accounts. New episodes drop every Wednesday wherever you listen to podcasts. Until then, stay safe and stay informed.